It all came crashing down over a single dirty plate left on the counter. The argument that followed wasn't about the plate. It was about years of unspoken frustrations, and it ended with my partner, Alex, looking at me with exhausted eyes and saying, "I don't even know how to talk to you anymore." In that moment, the floor fell out from under me. Our home had become a minefield. Every conversation was a careful navigation, trying to avoid the hidden triggers that would set off another explosion. We stopped talking about anything important, sticking to safe topics like groceries and the weather. The silence was safer than the inevitable fight. The cost of this was immense. I lived with a constant knot of anxiety, always bracing for the next conflict. I felt profoundly lonely, even when Alex was sitting right next to me on the couch. We were roommates who shared a bed, not partners. I was watching the person I loved most in the world become a stranger, and it was breaking my heart. I remember one night we went to our old favorite restaurant. We sat there for almost an hour and barely said 10 words. I watched other couples leaning in, laughing, sharing stories, and the space between Alex and me felt like an impossible canyon. I just pushed food around my plate, fighting back tears. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, and a cold, terrifying thought washed over me. This is how it ends. Not with a bang, but with a slow, agonizing fade into nothing. The life we had built, the future we had planned, it was all being suffocated by the words we couldn't say. I felt a soul-crushing hopelessness, believing we were truly beyond repair. I was losing everything that mattered to me. In my despair, I did what we all do. I doom-scrolled. But then I stumbled upon an article about communication, and one sentence hit me like a lightning bolt. Behind every criticism is an unmet need. This led me down a rabbit hole into something called nonviolent communication. The idea was simple but revolutionary. Instead of attacking the other person, you state a neutral observation, express your own feeling, identify the need behind that feeling, and then make a clear request. It wasn't about winning an argument, it was about being understood. Suddenly, our entire conflict looked different. When I would say, "You never help around the house," what I really meant was, "I feel overwhelmed and I need support." When Alex would shut down, it wasn't because he didn't care. It was because he felt criticized and needed respect. We weren't enemies, we were just two people desperately trying to have our needs met, but using all the wrong words. I knew I had to try. I was terrified. My hands were literally shaking as I approached Alex the next day. What if he thought this was just some new age nonsense? What if he shut me down again? The risk of being that vulnerable felt enormous, like stepping off a cliff and hoping he would be there to catch me. This felt like our last chance. I said, "When I see dishes on the counter, I feel overwhelmed because I have a deep need for order and support in our shared space. Would you be willing to help me by putting them in the dishwasher?" He just looked at me for a second, and then he nodded. It wasn't a movie moment, but for the first time in months, a conversation about a problem didn't end in a fight. That small success gave me the courage to share the whole idea with him. I showed him what I'd learned, and to my surprise, he was open to it. We made a pact to try. It was so awkward at first, like reading from a script, but we agreed to give each other grace as we learned this new language together. The biggest change was banning the phrase "you always" or "you never." Instead, we started sentences with "I feel." Saying "I feel lonely" when we're on our phones all night is impossible to argue with. It's not an attack, it's a truth. It invited empathy, not defense. A few weeks later, we had a disagreement about plans with friends. The old tension started to rise, but this time was different. I was able to say, "Okay, hang on. I'm feeling hurt right now because I need to feel like my time is valued. Can we start over?" And we did. We actually talked it through and found a compromise that worked for both of us. With each conversation where we chose compassion over criticism, another mine was disarmed. The constant anxiety I used to feel began to dissolve. Our home started to feel like a sanctuary again, a place where we could be ourselves without fear. We started getting curious about each other's feelings instead of assuming the worst. I'll never forget the first time we were in the kitchen and one of us made a silly joke, and we both burst out laughing. It was a real, deep belly laugh. I realized in that moment that I hadn't heard that sound in our home in so long. It was the sound of us returning. Today, our relationship isn't perfect because no relationship is, but the minefield is gone. When we disagree, we see it as a problem for us to solve together, not a battle for one of us to win. We are a team again. The feeling of being able to express a need or a hurt, and knowing that the person you love will hear you out with compassion instead of defensiveness, it's the most incredible gift. It's the foundation of true intimacy. It's the safety I had been craving all along. Sometimes I think back to that silent dinner, to the feeling of that vast, empty canyon between us. It feels like a lifetime ago. Now, our dinners are filled with conversation about our days, our dreams, our worries. We rebuilt the bridge across that canyon, one compassionate word at a time. We went from being lonely together to being deeply connected. The triumph isn't that we never argue. The triumph is that we now have the tools to navigate conflict without destroying each other. Healthy communication became the key that unlocked everything else. The trust, the intimacy, the laughter, the partnership. It saved us. If you feel like you're living in a minefield, please know that there is a way out. Communication is a skill you can learn. It takes courage and it takes practice, but transforming the way you speak to each other can transform your entire relationship. You can rebuild that bridge, and it starts with one small, brave, compassionate word.